I'm 94 years old. At this age, you don't wake up with plans. You wake up with memories.
And sometimes those memories feel heavier than the body carrying them. Trust is not what we think it is.
And sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who leave the deepest silence behind.
People think that when you reached 94, you must have figured life out, that you must be wise, peaceful, full of comforting lessons. But the truth is, most mornings I sit in this quiet house and realize the one thing I finally understand is the one thing I wish I didn't. Trust is not what we think it is, and sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who leave the deepest silence behind. I used to believe family meant safety. That word, family. When I was young, it sounded like a promise that couldn't be broken. I grew up in a small house where everything was shared. Food, space, trouble, even laughter. My father worked with his hands. My mother stretched every dollar like it was made of rubber. We didn't have much, but we had each other. At least that's what I thought. When you're young, you think love is permanent. You assume the people sitting around the dinner table will always be there. You don't realize yet how easily people drift apart.
I was 23 when I got my first real job. A warehouse on the edge of town. Long hours.
But to me, it felt like the beginning of something important. I worked hard, harder than anyone asked me to, not because I loved the job, but because I believed building something meant security, stability, a future my family could rely on. That belief stayed with me for decades. By the time I was 35, I had a small business of my own. Nothing fancy, just a repair shop, tools, grease, and the sound of metal hitting metal all day long. But it grew, slowly, quietly, year after year. I married a woman named Elena when I was 28. She had calm eyes and a way of speaking that made every room feel softer. We had 2 sons. When they were little, they used to run into my workshop after school, their shoes kicking dust across the floor, their voices echoing between the shelves. "Dad, what are you fixing today?" I always told them the same thing. "Something broken." They would laugh. I thought those moments would last forever. But life doesn't take things away all at once. It takes them slowly. So slowly, you barely notice. When the business began doing well, I started working longer hours. There were always customers, always repairs waiting, always bills to pay. I told myself it was for them, for the boys, for Elena, for our future. And in many ways, that was true. But the strange thing about chasing security is you can miss the life you're trying to protect. The boys grew up. Their visits to the shop stopped. School turned into college. College turned into jobs. Then families of their own. It all happened quietly, like watching the tide go out. At first, you barely noticed the water moving. I trusted my family with everything, not just my love, but my life's work. When I turned 65, my oldest son suggested something. "Dad, you should finally relax. Let us take over the business." It sounded reasonable. After all, that's what fathers imagine, isn't it? Passing something down, watching their children carry the torch forward. So I did what many fathers do. I stepped back, not completely. I still visited the shop sometimes, but the paperwork, the decisions, the ownership, I slowly handed those over. At the time, it felt like a moment of pride, like the closing chapter of a long, successful story. But pride can be a quiet disguise. Things began changing at the shop, new ideas, new systems, new ways of doing things. I tried not to interfere. After all, It was theirs now. One afternoon I went by unexpectedly, just to see the place. The sign out front had changed. The name I had spent 35 years building was gone, replaced by something modern, something cleaner, something that didn't include my name at all. It's a strange feeling, standing outside a place you built and realizing it no longer belongs to you. I didn't say anything, not then. A few months later, I learned something else. The business had been partially sold to investors. I hadn't been told, not beforehand, not afterward. I found out the way old men often find things out, by accident, through a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that evening, Elena across from me. She could see something had changed in my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain the quiet moment when you realize trust is not a permanent thing? That it can be rearranged, adjusted, sometimes even forgotten. The turning point came a year later. Elena got sick, cancer. The word itself feels heavy in the mouth. For months our world became hospitals, waiting rooms, and quiet drives home at night. My sons visited sometimes, not often, but enough to convince themselves they had. The business was doing well, they said, very well. Expansion, new locations. I nodded, but something inside me had started to understand something painful. Success doesn't always travel with loyalty. Elena passed away 3 days after her 72nd birthday. The house changed immediately, not with noise, with absence. People talk about grief like it's loud crying, dramatic sadness, but the real grief is silence. The empty chair, the untouched coffee cup, the way a house stops breathing. After she was gone, the visits from my sons became even rarer. Life is busy, they said. Children, work, travel. I understood, or at least I tried to. Years passed. The business grew bigger, more successful. But my world became smaller. Just this house, these walls, and the quiet. One afternoon when I was 82, my youngest son came to see me. He brought paperwork. He explained it calmly, carefully, like he was helping me. "Dad, it would be easier if the house was transferred into our names now." Estate planning, he called it, protection, simplicity, words that sound responsible. I signed, not because I fully understood every page, but because I trusted him. He was my son. That should have been enough. 2 years later, the house was sold, not by me, by them. Apparently it made financial sense. Property values had increased. The neighborhood was changing. I was moved into a smaller place across town, a quiet apartment building where no one knew my name. That was the day something inside me finally settled into a painful kind of clarity. Trust is a beautiful thing, but it's also fragile. And sometimes we give it away without noticing how much it costs. I'm 94 now. Most of the people from my life are gone. Elena is gone. Old friends are gone. Even the town I grew up in feels like a different place. My sons still call occasionally. Birthdays, holidays, short conversations, polite ones. I don't hate them. That might surprise you. I don't even think they meant to hurt me. Life just pulled them toward things that mattered more to them. Money, growth, their own families, and maybe that's the hardest truth I've learned. People don't always betray you with cruelty. Sometimes they do it simply by choosing something else, something more convenient, something more profitable, something that doesn't include you. If you're listening to this, you might think the lesson is to distrust everyone. But that's not exactly it. The real lesson is quieter than that. Be careful where you place your life, not just your money or your property, your life. Because once you hand it over, you can't always take it back. I trusted my family with everything, my work, my home, my future. And in the end, I discovered something I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Love and trust are not the same thing. Love can survive distance, but trust requires attention, protection, sometimes even boundaries, things I never learned to create. I assumed family meant forever. I assumed blood meant loyalty. But time has a way of correcting our assumptions, and at 94, corrections arrive too late to change the story. Now I spend my mornings by the window, watching people walk past, young couples, parents with children, workers rushing somewhere important, everyone believing there will be more time. I believed that too, for decades. If this story means something to you, don't rush to judge the people in it, not my sons, not even me. Just remember that trust is something you must hold carefully, even with the people you love most, because sometimes the deepest loneliness doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the quiet realization that the people you built your life for kept living it without you. And at 94, all you can really do is sit with that truth and listen to the silence it leaves behind.